Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nick Kyogre Kawaii. Today we are here for a draft analysis breakdown video for the IBA International Battle Association Season 2. We just drafted last weekend, and here this weekend is my draft analysis, going over the picks I made, letting you guys know why I drafted the certain mons without getting too in-depth and giving away too many strategies. I'm going to let you know some of the general reasons why I made my picks and just let you guys see the team we're going into. Battles will be starting Saturday, July 4th. So a week from today will be the first battle video going up for week 1. So yeah, let's dive right into it and check out the first Pokemon that I drafted. Before we get too far, make sure to like this video here if you do enjoy it or if you're looking forward to IBA Season 2. And please do subscribe if you are new and you enjoy Draft League content, because there is a lot of Draft League content that goes up on this channel in addition to other competitive VGC content. So please do subscribe if you are new, because you don't want to miss a single video. Lots of fun stuff coming in the future. I do want to let you guys know the drafting system, just give you a little bit of background on how the draft works. You can see on the screen there is a G-Max Gigantamax pick, Tier 1, Tier 2, 2 from Tier 3, Tier 4, and Tier 5. Then underneath that there is 4 free picks. The free picks basically had 400 points that you could spend, and Pokemon from different tiers were worth different amount of points. So you had to make 4 picks that were considered free picks, and they had to total no more than 400 points in order to stay within your budget, essentially. So how that would work, you're gonna see after I draft a Tier 1 Pokemon, which I get a Tier 1 Pokemon for free, part of the top section there. If I wanted another Tier 1 Pokemon, I would have to use some of my points of my 400 to spend on a Tier 1, which Tier 1s happen to be, I believe, 180 points. I will double check. Yes, 180 points. So that's kind of how that worked, and I'll explain what tier my free picks came from as we go through. Round 1, I was, I think, third to last. I think there was only 2 people that picked after me, so everybody had got to make their round 1 pick before I did, and I was deciding whether or not I wanted to go with the Tier 1 or maybe my Gigantamax. One thing I'll explain, which I didn't mention before, is we did have a rule where everybody did have to choose their Gigantamax pick no later than round 3. So within the first 3 picks, one of those first 3 had to be your Gigantamax. So that is one of the strong reasons I was considering going for a Gigantamax round 1. However, I was more concerned with Tier 1. It seemed like a lot of Tier 1s were going to get picked quickly because they are pretty much the best Pokemon in the game. So for my first pick, I went with a Tier 1 and I chose Clefable. Really strong fairy type Pokemon. If you play singles showdown OU, you know it's a good Pokemon. You know it can do a lot of things. Having a fairy type is good. It's one of the better fairy types, being pure fairy, only weak to a few things, and it's just a really solid mon because it has great defensive potential and has some offensive threat as well. It can do a lot of things and is just a really, really solid Pokemon to build a team around. I think it's a really great, just overall strong Pokemon, and I knew if I didn't pick it, there really wasn't any other fairy types I wanted, and I knew it probably wouldn't be around if I didn't pick it up round 1 or round 2. So I decided to grab this one round 1, and then basically how the draft worked is we went from the top down to the bottom, and as I mentioned, I was third from the bottom. Once we got to the bottom, we went back up. So it kind of went down and then back up, and it snakes like that. So that being said, the reason I'm mentioning that is because after I got to pick Clefable, there was only 4 picks that happened, and then boom, it was coming back up the draft, and it was my turn again. So I went ahead and picked up Skarmory. The reason I went with Skarmory is Clefable can be really good defensively, but also can be specially defensive. Skarmory is more of a physical defensive only, so between the two of them, I could have a special defensive wall and a physical defensive wall as potential options, but they can both do so much more. Skarmory specifically has the Steel type. Steel and Fairy types work well together because Skarmory is not weak to Steel where Clefable is, so they balance each other's weaknesses out a little bit there. Also, Skarmory being immune to poison and resists Steel. It allows, if Clefable is out there and there's a Pokemon that Clefable doesn't want to stay in on, 9 times out of 10, Skarmory can take that hit. So they work well together typing wise. It is just a bulky defensive Pokemon, steel and flying type, immune. It's a steel type that's immune to ground. So it's really good for defense. Also has a lot of access to hazard moves like Stealth Rock and Spikes and such like that. So very, very good Pokemon. And again, you'll see here, this is a free pick. The reason being is because Skarmory was also in tier 1, meaning that it did cost me 180 out of my 400 points. So that meant I only had 220 points left for my remaining 3 picks. So that was a little bit of a risky play, but I really, really wanted Skarmory and Clefable. I thought that would form a really nice defensive core that I could build the rest of my team around. And so, speaking of the rest of my team, we came around after it went back up and back down. It took a while before I could pick my Gigantamax, because we were coming on round 3 and I did have to pick my Gigantamax. I really wanted Gengar. I have 2 really slow defensive Pokemon, especially for Gigantamax. You really want your Gigantamax Pokemon to be outputting a lot of damage, and if it's faster, I think that's good, because then you can outspeed and do a lot of damage before you get hit by your opponent. So that being said, I was really hoping to get Gengar, but I knew there was a slim chance that it would still be left around by the time it was my pick. And unfortunately, it did get sniped there by the Halifax Hitmonchan's Stremy himself. He sniped it from me, which I really wanted it, but that was okay. There really wasn't many fast, powerful Gigantamax Pokemon left. Besides, our pick was Charizard. G-Max Charizard. The reason I really didn't want Charizard is because of a glaring 4x weakness to rock-type attacks and Stealth Rock, doing half of its health if it switches in when those are up. So I was nervous to pick Charizard. I knew that I was really going to have to build the rest of my team around protecting Charizard's rock weakness and Stealth Rock weakness. But it's an overall, it does accomplish what I wanted for my Gigantamax Pokemon. It is fast, relatively. It's not the fastest Pokemon, but it has a decent speed stat, and it is very powerful. And it can do a lot of damage in the right scenario. And, you know, being a flying type with its Dynamax move, it can boost its speed. It's got a lot of things it can do. It's a solid, out of what was left, I think it was my best option for Gigantamax. So, that being said, that's really all I have to say about G-Max Charizard for right now. We're going to move on to our 4th overall pick. That happened to be our Tier 2 free pick. It came, that didn't cost us any points, went right into Tier 2, and that was Galarian Slowbro. I really, really wanted to use this Pokemon. It's brand new to Generation 8, is an alternate form of Slowbro, Poison and Psychic type. Has a new ability called Quick Draw, which means it can go first 20% of the time. Has a cool new move called Shell Sidearm too, so it's got a lot of cool new access to new moves, a new ability. It's got offensive power with really high attack and special attack. It's slow, but again, its quick draw ability can help to offset that. It's bulky enough that being slow doesn't too much matter for it because it can tank a lot of hits. And then if you really just want to forego moving first, you don't even have to run quick draw. It has the ability Regenerator, which means every time it switches in and out of battle, when you switch it out, it gains back a certain percentage of its health. I don't know the exact percent, but it gets health back when it switches out. So you can definitely do a lot of really cool stuff with Slowbro, and I think it's going to be a Pokemon that puts in a lot of work hopefully this season. I've never really used it, but I've already seen other videos of other people using it for competitive Pokemon and seen a lot of the cool stuff it can do. That's all I have to say for Slowbro, so we will move right on to our next pick, Gastrodon. So one thing again I was very worried about was I was starting to worry about electric types and rock types, because Skarmory and Charizard are both pretty weak to electric, and both Clefable and Slowbro don't have any resistances to electric, and also rock types. Skarmory is neutral to rock type and really is pretty good against most rock types, but Charizard is very weak to it, so I wanted to have another option besides Skarmory that could resist and really deal with rock types really well, and electric types. And Gastrodon fills that role absolutely perfectly. It is immune, being a ground type, to electric attacks. It's also technically immune to water with one of its abilities, Storm Drain. It can be immune to water if you want, so that helps Charizard out immensely, and it also is resistant to rock types. So everything that Charizard is weak to, Gastrodon is a perfect counter for as far as type switch-ins to that type attack. which is really, really good. And then Gastrodon on its own can be offensive, can be defensive, really annoying to take down. It has good abilities against Storm Drain and Sticky Hold, so there's different things you can do with it. But overall, it's a good defensive Pokemon, but they can, if you want, have some offensive pressure. But it's mainly there to help check some of my team's weaknesses and help round out my type diversity, because I did not have a water or a ground type. The next pick that I had was I was kind of filling out my tiers at this point, wanting to get 2 tier 3 Pokemon. I really wanted to complete the Fairy, Dragon, and Steel core. Having those Pokemon together usually work well. Having all 3 of them kind of form like a core is what they call it. So I had the Fairy type in Clefable. I had the Steel type in Skarmory. There wasn't a lot of good Dragon types in Tier 3 that were left. So I decided to pick Goodra. Again, my team's still looking pretty slow. Really slow team, really bulky team. But the thing about Goodra is it's slow, but also outputs a ton of damage and is very defensive. So, and really isn't that slow. Base 80 speed can still outspeed a lot of the slower things in this game. So I like Goodra. It is just a powerhouse of a Pokemon. Not a lot of things want to switch into it, and not a lot of things can deal with it in one hit. And it's got fantastic move coverage. And some good abilities too. So I'm really excited to use Goodra. I think it's going to also, again, really help our team overall. As I mentioned, I looked at the speed stats. I was noticing how slow my team was getting, and I didn't really like it. I wanted a fast Pokemon, and I really didn't know who to pick. I didn't have an electric type, and so I went with Jolteon here. It is very fast. It's also very hard hitting with special attack. And I was thinking ahead. I knew what the next few picks I wanted, and there's some other reasons I'm not going to say now, but I did want to include this on the team for some other reasons as well. But besides the fact that it's fast, it also is resistant to electric, so just gives me another option for electric resistances here. And again, I wanted to have a fast Pokemon to help cover my team being so slow, basically. I couldn't really form a sentence there, but that's the gist of it. That's all I really have to say about Jolteon. Honestly, there's not much you can do with Jolteon, but what it does pretty well. Moving on, our 8th overall pick came from Tier 4. We snagged Torkoal. As I was thinking about some support Pokemon, I realized I didn't really have a Pokemon. I wanted another Pokemon that could set Stealth Rocks besides Skarmory, and also one that has Rapid Spin. So Torkoal is good for setting hazards, removing hazards, is also pretty good at being a physical defensive Pokemon as well. And in addition, it can set up the Sun for me. And I really want the Sun set up because it pairs well with Charizard being a Fire type. Boosting those Fire type attacks. So Torkoal hopped on the squad, and that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Hazard removal and Sun Setter. Pretty straightforward, basic stuff you can do with Torkoal. Next up, I realized I had no resistances or immunities to Ghost. That was a problem for me. I needed to be able to have something that could switch in if an opponent has a really strong Ghost type. So I went with the normal and fighting type Beware. The reason I also went with Beware for the normal type, and I wanted a fighting type, so it's immune to Ghost and also resistant to Rock. Again, Rock really scared me since I added another Fire type to my team. I was kind of worried about Rock type Pokemon doing a lot of damage to Charizard and Torkoal and other Pokemon on my team. Beware, being a fighting type, does now resist those rock type moves. So that was the gist with Beware. I didn't have a normal or fighting type, so it gave me more type diversity and some key resistances and immunities. I was really focused on making sure I have resistances and immunities to every type. It's really bad to have a draft that is too weak to one type. You don't want to have any open holes that an opponent can take advantage of if they realize you're really, really weak to one type. Coming up, the second to last pick here. We went with the mascot. I didn't have a grass type on the team. Now we have a fire, water, and grass type. Those make their whole type synergy. They work well with each other, having one of each type. I picked up the mascot because I really do like drafting my mascot Leafeon whenever I can. It's not the best Pokemon, but to be fair, there wasn't a lot of great Pokemon in Tier 5, and I didn't have a grass type, so again, more type diversity. Plus, it does pair really well with Torkoal because it does have the chlorophyll ability, which doubles its speed stat when the sun is up. So it had some nice synergy with the other Pokemon on my team, gave me a type I didn't have, and I do have some fun things I plan on trying with Leafeon during this season. And moving on to our last and final pick. This was hard. I did really want Ninjask. I was thinking about Ninjask with its speed boost. Because my team is slow, I thought it would be cool to like protect or substitute and then baton pass, stuff like that, in order to pass my speed to a Pokemon that was maybe a little bit slower and then could help sweep from there. Unfortunately, I did get Ninjask. Like 2 other people said that they wanted Ninjask even after the one person picked it. So Ninjask was actually a really popular final pick. I didn't end up getting it, so I really had to last minute kind of rethink who I wanted on my team. I decided I wanted another steel type and another fast Pokemon. And there was one actually, a Pokemon that I thought was probably the most slept on in Tier 5. As far as the Tier 5, mainly they were like unevolved Pokemon. I felt this was one of the stronger Pokemon in that tier. I went ahead and snagged Dugtrio Alolan. It's another steel type, so helps with fairies. It's another ground type, helps with electric. It's also quad resist rock, so it really pairs with my Gigantamax Charizard very, very well. Again, it's a base 100 speed, giving me another semi-fast Pokemon that has a decent attack stat as well. So it's got some offensive presence and has some cool, a good speed stat. And again, good type synergy with my team. And that's everybody. That's everybody right there. I made this final slide so you can see the squad. There's the squad all together. I like my draft a lot. I meticulously thought it out. I made sure I didn't have any big type weaknesses that I can tell. I have at least a couple answers for everything in my head. We'll see how it goes. Week 1 again is going to be going up on July 4th. We're battling Kershaka. I'm excited for that battle, and I will see you guys next week for week 1 of IBA Season 2. Peace.